Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take a whole stack of reports, research, all sorts of insights, and basically turn them into your personal shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
Hmm.
Today, our mission is, well, to really discuss elaborately and explain everything we can from this fascinating collection of reports that came out around May 2025.
Yep, it's quite a mix.
It really is. It's like this rich tapestry covering global trends, but also digging into some really specific breakthroughs in India. We're hoping to give you a fresh perspective on, human progress, economic shifts, environmental challenges, even what's happening with justice and education.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And we've got a truly expansive data set here. It touches on pretty much everything: the nuances of human development, the pathways of economic growth, the critical state of our planet, and some really remarkable advancements in social sectors, too.
Right.
What's truly fascinating, and I think you'll see this as we go, is how these reports, which might seem separate, actually connect. They're not just isolated bits of info. They kind of weave together, revealing this larger, more intricate picture of where our world is right now. So our aim is to synthesize all these diverse findings, try and spot the underlying patterns, and help you understand not just what the data says on the surface.
But the why?
Exactly.
Cool.
Why it matters, its deeper implications, and maybe even what it suggests for the future.
So get ready for some hopefully genuine aha moments, maybe some surprising facts along the way, and definitely a clear, in-depth understanding of what's truly important across all these findings. Let's really unpack this wealth of information together. #2, the human story development, poverty, and social well-being. Okay, so we're kicking things off with the very essence of human progress, right? How societies are developing, how people are actually living, and importantly, where the challenges still lie.
Mhm.
And for that, we're turning straight to the UNDP's Human Development Report for 2025. Now, traditionally, when we think about a country's progress, our minds often jump straight to, like, economic growth, GDP figures, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the standard metrics.
Exactly. But the Human Development Index, the HDI, it really challenges that narrow view.
Mm.
It's not just about economic growth alone. The report specifically calls it a summary measure of average achievement in key dimensions of human development.
Right. Key dimensions.
Which means true progress goes way beyond just money or economic output. It's fundamentally about people, their capabilities, their opportunities, their overall well-being. It's a much more holistic and, I'd argue, probably a more accurate report card for how humanity's doing.
Absolutely. And the real genius, maybe, of the HTI framework, which this 2025 report really emphasizes, is its comprehensive methodology. It uses a whole suite of composite indices to give you that truly holistic view, moving us far beyond just simple economic numbers.
Okay.
So beyond the core HDI itself, you've got things like the Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, or IHDI. Now, this one is absolutely crucial.
Why is that?
Because, well, a country might have a pretty high average HDI score, right? But the IHDI tells you how that development is actually distributed among the population. Think of it like this. If the HDI is the average grade in a class, the IHDI is like looking at the actual grade distribution. Are most students doing well, or is it just a few top performers pulling up that average while loads of others are struggling? It exposes those internal gaps, those disparities.
That's a great analogy. So it cuts through the average. What other lenses does the report use to sort of deepen this understanding?
Well, then you have the Gender Development Index, GDI,
Uh-huh.
and the Gender Inequality Index, GII. These are specifically designed to measure gender-specific challenges and achievements. They highlight the disparities between men and women in areas like health, education, economic participation,
Yeah.
the critical stuff.
Right.
They help us see where societal structures might be holding back opportunities for basically half the population. Then there's the Multidimensional Poverty Index, MPI. This gives us a much clearer picture of poverty in all its different forms, not just lack of income. It looks at deprivations in health, education, living standards, all at the same time. Because poverty is rarely just about not having enough money. Right?
Yeah, it's more complex.
Exactly. And finally, there's the Planetary Pressures Adjusted Human Development Index, or PHDI. This is a critically important innovation, especially now. It basically integrates environmental sustainability into the picture. It discounts a country's HDI score based on its per capita carbon emissions and its material footprint.
Ah, okay. So it penalizes high environmental impact.
Sort of, yeah. In our current climate crisis, this measure forces us to consider the environmental cost of human progress. It asks, is our development truly sustainable for the next generation? Each of these layers adds vital depth, making sure we understand the genuine well-being of people, not just their material wealth.
So, Okay, stripping it back to that core HDI then. What are the fundamental building blocks? The report mentions three specific pillars, chosen because they represent these basic human capabilities. First up is longevity,
Hmm.
measured by life expectancy at birth. And it makes sense, right? If people are living longer, healthier lives, it's a pretty clear sign that things like health systems, nutrition, clean water, maybe even peace and stability are generally improving.
It's a fundamental capability, absolutely. The second pillar is education or knowledge. This uses two key indicators. First, the expected years of schooling for children just entering school age.
It's a potential education.
Potential, exactly. And second, the mean years of schooling for adults age 25 and over. So that gives you this dual picture. It measures both the access to education, how many years a kid can expect to be in school, and also the attainment, reflecting the actual knowledge level of the adult population. It's not just about bums on seats in classrooms.
Right, it's about actual learning.
It's ensuring education translates into a more knowledgeable, skilled population. And finally, the third pillar, income per capita. Specifically, gross national income, GNI per capita. This basically reflects the living standards people enjoy, their access to resources, economic opportunities.
Okay.
So when you combine these three, a long and healthy life, access to knowledge, and a decent standard of living, they offer a really robust framework for assessing a nation's human development.
And to make sense of these scores, the report uses four clear buckets, right? Very high human development is zero point 0.8 HOO or more. High is between 0.70 and 0.799. Medium human development is 0.550 to 0.699. And low is anything below 0.550. That gives us a clear benchmark, helps understand how countries stack up against each other and the global average.
Now let's look at the global outlook, because here's where it gets really interesting. The report highlights some genuinely concerning trends. Okay, so the global HDI is projected to hit its highest level ever in 2024. The 2023 value was 0.756. That sounds good on the surface.
Yeah, sounds pop.
But, and this is a big but, the report warns that the pace of improvement is going to be the slowest since they started tracking this 35 years ago.
Slowest ever.
Slowest ever. This slowdown has really significant implications. It suggests that the momentum of global progress in human well-being, while still inching forward, is losing serious steam. Makes you ask, is this just a temporary thing, maybe post-pandemic recovery issues, or does it signal something deeper, a structural problem with our global development models?
Right. If progress is slowing, even as the world, in theory, gets richer overall, what does that say about how we're distributing things or tackling barriers?
Precisely. It suggests we might critically need to rethink our current approach to global development.
And that's not the only worrying trend, is it? There's also this reversal of a long-term positive pattern.
That's right. Compounding that concern, for the past 4 years, the gap between countries with very high HDI and those with very low HDI has actually been growing.
Widening, but
Yeah.
wasn't it narrowing before?
For decades, yes. We generally saw disparities narrowing, poorer nations slowly catching up. But now, the most developed and the least developed nations are drifting further apart again. This reversal, it signals a serious challenge for global equity, for cooperation. It could easily worsen geopolitical tensions, ramp up migration pressures, make it way harder to tackle shared global problems like climate change or future pandemics.
Because we're less aligned.
Exactly. It underscores that the benefits of development just aren't being spread evenly. It's leading to a more fractured and, frankly, probably a more volatile world.
Okay, let's shift the focus specifically to India then. The report offers, you said, a mixed but largely positive picture within these global trends.
Yes, largely positive, I'd say. India ranked 130th out of 193 countries in the HDI for 2023, with a value of 0.685. Now, that puts it firmly in the medium human development category, but critically, it's an improvement from 133rd place in 2022.
Okay, moving up.
Moving up. And it shares that 130th spot with Bangladesh. This upward movement is definitely a positive sign. It points towards sustained, deliberate efforts in improving human well-being across the country.
And what's really striking about India's position is its long-term growth trajectory, right? You mentioned it outpaced global averages.
Absolutely remarkable. Its HDI value has shot up by over 53% since 1990. That rate has significantly outpaced both the global average and the broader South Asian average growth rates.
So what's driving that acceleration?
Well, it suggests a combination of things. Focused policy interventions, definitely. Economic reforms aimed at opening markets, fostering enterprise, and increased investments in those crucial social sectors like health and education. Put together, they seem to have created this powerful engine for human development. It's not just small steps. It's been a really profound, almost transformative shift in the nation's human capabilities over 3 decades.
And we can see that in the actual numbers, comparing 1990 to 2023.
Yes, very clearly in the concrete metrics. Let's start with life expectancy, a really fundamental measure of health and well-being. It's increased significantly from 58.6 years back in 1990 to a much healthier 72.8 years in 2023.
That's a huge jump.
It is, and that's the highest it's been since 1990. The report directly credits national health programs for this, things like widespread immunization drives, better maternal and child health services, more effective disease control. These are policies demonstrably making a real difference, extending people's healthy lives.
Incredible progress on health. What about education and the economic side?
On the education front, the expected years of schooling for children rose substantially from 8.2 years to 13 years. That's a clear sign of much greater access to education and a growing belief in its importance for the younger generation.
But the report adds a caveat about quality.
It does, wisely. It notes the ongoing need for attention to quality and learning outcomes. It's not just about getting kids in school, but making sure they're actually learning useful skills and knowledge.
Right.
Mean years of schooling for adults, the actual attainment level also improved to 6.9 years in 2023. We don't have the 1990 data for a direct comparison there, unfortunately. And economically, perhaps the most striking change, gross national income per capita. It saw a huge jump from just over $2,100 in 1990, adjusted for purchasing power, to over $9,000 in 2023. Wow. That reflects a considerable improvement in living standards and economic opportunities for many people. Real upward mobility.
And then there's that truly monumental achievement in poverty alleviation highlighted in the report.
Yes, this is huge. Between 2015-16 and 2019-21, a staggering 13.5 crore people, that's 135 million, moved out of multidimensional poverty. This is out of India's then population of about 144 crore.
Just put that in perspective for us.
Okay, think about it. That's like the entire population of a country like Russia or Japan being lifted out of poverty in just a few years. It's a massive shift. It shows the success of targeted interventions, hitting multiple dimensions of deprivation, health, education, living standards. It's proof that focused policy can make a tangible difference in millions of lives.
But despite that incredible progress, there's still this shadow of inequality you mentioned.
Yes, and this raises an important question. Despite the progress, inequality looms large. The report reveals that income and gender inequalities together reduced India's overall HDI score by 30.7%.
30%, that's huge.
One of the highest losses in the region. What that means, practically, is that while the national picture is improving, a massive chunk of India's human potential and development progress is being held back by these persistent gaps.
So the average doesn't tell the whole story?
Not at all. It's like having a high-performing engine, but a significant part of the vehicle, especially women and those with lower incomes, isn't benefiting fully or participating fully in that progress. Now, there has been some welcome reduction in health and education inequality, which is good news. But gender and income gaps are stubbornly persistent. The report does mention recent women's reservation reforms in politics as showing some progress, which suggests deliberate policy can start to chip away at these structural inequalities. But yeah, there's still a significant journey ahead to get equitable outcomes for everyone.
Now, looking towards the future, the report flags India as emerging as a global AI leader. That sounds really significant.
It is potentially transformative. The report states India ranks highest globally in terms of self-reported prevalence of AI skills. Now, that's self-reported, but it still reflects this deep, widespread engagement with AI across the workforce.
And retaining talent, too.
Yes, and critically, the country has become remarkably successful at retaining its homegrown AI talent. Apparently, 20% of its AI researchers are choosing to stay and work in India now. That's up dramatically from almost zero back in 2019.
Wow, that's a turnaround.
It really is. This concentration of AI talent and skills bodes incredibly well for India's capacity to innovate and lead in the digital age. It positions India uniquely to perhaps leapfrog some traditional development challenges.
How so? Like using AI for social good?
Exactly. Imagine AI being used to optimize public health programs in villages, or personalize education for millions, or revolutionize farming practices for smallholders. This isn't just about a tech boom, it's about India potentially building a new blueprint for human development that directly integrates advanced tech into its social fabric. That's quite pioneering for a developing nation.
And building on that, there's this new initiative, Yashoda AI.
That's right. The National Commission for Women, the NCW, they've collaborated with Future Shift Labs, FSL, to launch Yashoda AI. your AI Saki. Saki means friend.
Okay.
It's a direct, impactful effort to boost AI literacy and digital awareness, specifically among rural and semi-urban women. This is crucial for ensuring the benefits of tech advancement are shared equitably, making women active participants.
So practical skills.
Yes, empowering them with practical skills in AI basics, cybersecurity, digital safety, fostering community learning, making them leaders in the digital space. It directly supports that broader Viksit Bharat vision, the developed India by 2047 idea, by promoting tech inclusion, making sure no one gets left behind in this digital revolution.
Let's zoom back out to the global picture on social issues, because while India is making strides, some really persistent, even alarming challenges remain worldwide. The World Social Report 2025 from UNDESA paints a pretty stark picture on poverty.
It does. Over 690 million people still living in extreme poverty. That's under $2.15 a day. The number alone just emphasizes the sheer, staggering scale of this ongoing challenge. Despite decades of effort, a huge segment of humanity is still in profound deprivation.
And what about income inequality? Is that getting better or worse globally?
It's complex, showing some shifting tides. Since 1990, income inequality has actually risen in most high-income countries and several big middle-income nations, including China and India, notably, risen. Alarmingly, the report points out that countries where inequality has grown are home to two-thirds of the world's population.
Two-thirds?
Yeah. So a vast majority of people are living with wider gaps between rich and poor. That can fuel social unrest, hinder overall progress. However, and this is really important, growing income inequality is not a universal trend.
Oh, where is it declining?
The Gini coefficient, that's a common inequality measure, has actually declined over the past 3 decades in many Latin American, African, and other Asian countries. This encourages critical thinking, right? It shows diverse paths exist. It suggests specific policies may be focused on redistribution, strong social safety nets, equitable access to opportunities can actually work to reduce disparities. It offers a hopeful counter-narrative.
Okay, now onto something even more alarming, more immediate. Acute food insecurity. The Global Report on Food Crises 2025 has some grim findings. First, let's just be clear on the definition. Acute food insecurity isn't just being hungry, right?
No, it's much more severe. It's a breakdown in the entire system that gets food to people. It means something's gone terribly wrong with whether food is available in markets, or if people have access to the money to buy it, or if their bodies can utilize the nutrients properly, or even if the supply is stable against shocks like droughts or conflict.
So multiple potential failure points.
Exactly. One or more of those dimensions gets severely disrupted. It's about a sudden, often life-threatening deprivation that throws whole communities into crisis.
And the numbers.
They are truly staggering. In 2024, 295.3 million people, that's nearly 23% of the population they analyzed, face high levels of acute food insecurity across 53 of the 65 countries they assessed.
295 million.
And that was 13.7 million more people, about 5% more, compared to just 2023.
So it's getting worse, not better.
That's the deeply concerning part, the persistence and escalation. 2024 was the 5th year in a row with this figure above 20%, and the 6th consecutive year of increasing acute food insecurity and child malnutrition.
Child malnutrition, too.
Nearly 38 million children under 5, acutely malnourished. It's heartbreaking, with devastating long-term effects on their development, their health.
Where are the worst affected regions?
In terms of sheer numbers, Nigeria, Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo were hit hardest. But if you look at the largest share of the population affected, Palestine's Gaza Strip stands out horrifically at 100%, followed by South Sudan and Sudan.
100%.
Yeah. The key drivers behind this global crisis, primarily its conflict and insecurity, compounded by weather extremes, droughts, floods, and severe economic shocks that just wipe out livelihoods and purchasing power. It gives you a stark framework for understanding this complex, interconnected problem.
And you mentioned a crucial note about India.
Yes, very important for our listeners. India is not among the countries assessed in this specific report, so the data we're discussing here doesn't include India's particular food security situation.
Okay, got it. Moving to another critical area, healthcare. The WHO's 2025 report on the global nursing workforce. It highlights the absolutely vital role nurses play, right?
Crucial. Foundational, really. The report stresses their role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, addressing health inequities. It tells you nursing isn't just another job, it's the backbone of building strong health systems, ensuring fair access to care globally. Without a strong nursing workforce, the whole thing crumbles.
And the workforce itself, Is it growing? Are there enough nurses?
Well, the global nursing workforce grew to 29.8 million in 2023, which sounds positive. But there are these huge concerning imbalances. A staggering 78% of all nurses are concentrated in countries that only have 49% of the world's population.
78% in half the world. That's incredibly skewed.
Extreme maldistribution. It means many regions are critically understaffed, putting immense pressure on the nurses they do have, and severely limiting access to care for millions, probably billions of people.
And there's a paradox in some countries.
Yes, compounding this. In low and middle-income countries, you see this paradox of underemployment, even though more nurses are graduating. The report points out that population growth is just outpacing job creation in the health sector in these regions.
So trained nurses can't find jobs even when they're desperately needed.
Exactly. It raises critical questions about aligning economic development with healthcare capacity. You have trained professionals ready to work and a massive need for their skills, but the system can't absorb them.
And global mobility is another factor, nurses moving between countries.
Yes, a major concern for workforce sustainability. 1 in 7 nurses worldwide is foreign-born. In high-income countries, that jumps to 23%, nearly 1 in 4.
Wow.
Now, this raises serious questions for both the sending and receiving countries. It fills immediate gaps in wealthier nations, sure, but potentially worsens shortages in the countries these nurses leave, creating a brain drain that undermines their own health systems.
And the workforce is overwhelmingly female.
Massively so. Women make up 85% of the nursing workforce. It highlights their immense, often unheralded contribution to global health. But it also points to an urgent need for gender equity and empowerment policies within the profession to support them properly.
Including mental health support.
Which is shockingly lacking.
Yeah.
Only 42% of countries provide dedicated mental health support for nurses. This is despite the undeniable, significantly increased stress from COVID-related trauma, burnout, crushing workloads. It's an oversight that puts the very people caring for us at risk.
So the bottom line is investment.
Absolutely. All this leads to a very clear, urgent call for investment. The report emphasizes sustained investment in nursing jobs, education, and crucially, in working conditions. That's vital for building stronger, more resilient health systems everywhere. It lays out 12 policy priorities, 5 additional recommendations, all geared towards universal health coverage. It underscores a basic truth. Without a robust, well-educated, adequately supported nursing workforce, that global goal of health for all, it just stays out of reach.
Okay, let's bring the focus back to India now, looking at demographic shifts through the Sample Registration System, or SRS, report for 2021. A key finding is about the fertility rate.
Yes, India's total fertility rate, or TFR, remained at 2.0 in 2021, and that is now below the replacement level of 2.1.
Can you quickly explain what replacement level means again?
Sure. It's basically the average number of children per woman needed for a generation to exactly replace itself, keeping the population stable if you ignore migration. So falling below 2.1 means that over the long term, India's population growth will slow down, and eventually the population could start to age and potentially even shrink.
So this isn't just a number, it fundamentally reshapes society.
Absolutely. It impacts everything, the workforce size, the pressure on Social Security, healthcare needs, everything.
And this isn't uniform across India, right? There are big state differences.
Significant variations, yes. Bihar, for instance, reported the highest TFR at 3.0, still reflecting more traditional patterns. But in stark contrast, Delhi and West Bengal had the lowest TFRs at just 1.4.
1.4.
Yeah, and in fact, several economically advanced states, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra, Punjab, they all have TFRs well below that 2.1 replacement level now. It clearly indicates this profound demographic shift is happening at different speeds across different regions linked to development stages.
Which must have huge implications for planning in those states.
Massive implications for future infrastructure, social services, economic strategies. States will face very different demographic challenges and opportunities in the coming decades.
And this shift is also showing up dramatically in India's age structure.
Profoundly. The 0-14 age group, kids and young teens, has shrunk considerably. It was 41.2% of the population back in 1971. Now it's down to 24.8% in 2021.
That's a big drop.
Huge. Conversely, the 15-59 working age group has risen to a substantial 66.2%. This creates what economists call the demographic dividend.
The potential economic boost from having more workers.
Exactly. A larger proportion of the population in their most productive years could provide a massive boost to economic growth through more labor, more savings. However, at the same time, the elderly population, 60 plus, has also risen.
So an aging population challenge is emerging too.
It is. States like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Himachal Pradesh already have the highest proportions of elderly citizens.
Um,
Bihar, Assam, Delhi have the lowest for now. So it highlights this emerging double-edged challenge, harnessing the dividend while also preparing for an aging population. That means thinking seriously about Social Security, healthcare for older people, elder care facilities. India has to navigate both sides of this coin carefully.
And another interesting social trend from the SRS report is women marrying later.
Yes, another significant shift. The mean age at marriage for females has gone up from 19.3 years in 1990 to 22.5 years in 2021.
What might be driving that?
Probably a mix of interconnected factors. Increased access to and attainment of education for women, definitely. Greater participation in the workforce might delay marriage. And just evolving cultural norms that perhaps prioritize personal and professional development before marriage and kids.
So reflecting broader female empowerment.
It seems to suggest that, yes, more agency for women over their life choices. It indicates changing family structures and societal expectations across the country.
It's clear these demographic shifts are really reshaping India's future. Has the government acknowledged this?
Oh, yes, definitely. The 2024 budget, for instance, proposed forming a high-power committee specifically to look into these demographic changes and their implications, though the report notes it hasn't actually been formed yet.
Okay. And the SRS report itself is pretty crucial right now.
Absolutely vital, especially with the census 2021 still pending. The SRS remains the most robust, comprehensive demographic survey we have, covering a huge sample, 8,842 units, 84 lakh people. Its findings are essential for informing policy across every single sector, making sure government strategies are actually responding to how the population is evolving. #3, India's economic landscape growth, industry, and governance.
Okay, let's dive into India's economic landscape now, starting with its macroeconomic strength and how it stands globally. The UNACE's World Economic Situation and Prospects 2025 report, it paints a pretty precarious global picture, doesn't it?
It does. The world economy is projected to slow down quite a bit, growth dropping to 2.4% in 2025, down from 2.9% in 2024.
Why the slowdown?
Mainly heightened trade tensions, think U.S.-China friction, things like that, and significant policy uncertainty globally, which makes businesses hesitant to invest. Now, global inflation is easing, which is good news, but these underlying risks, they definitely remain.
So what does this global gloom mean for a fast-growing economy like India? Does it get dragged down, or does it manage to buck the trend?
Well, this is where India's resilience really stands out against that shaky global backdrop. Despite the broader slowdown, India's economy is forecast to grow by an impressive 6.3% in 2025.
6.3%, that's much higher than the global average.
Way higher. It maintains its position as the highest growth among large economies, and that momentum is expected to continue strongly into 2026. This isn't just marginal outperformance either. The IMF's April 2025 World Economic Outlook actually projects India will surpass Japan to become the fourth largest economy globally.
Fourth largest, wow.
With a GDP of about USD 4.187 trillion. And it remains the fastest growing major economy at 6.2%, significantly outpacing China, which is projected around 4.0%.
So India is becoming a major engine for global growth.
It signifies its increasing weight and influence, absolutely. It has undeniable potential to be a significant driver of future global growth, a real bright spot in an otherwise pretty uncertain global picture.
That's remarkable. So what exactly is fueling this growth? What are the key internal engines pushing India forward while others slow down?
The reports point to several key interconnected drivers. First, exceptionally strong domestic demand. And interestingly, especially strong in rural areas.
Rural demand, that's significant.
It is. It indicates robust consumer confidence, good purchasing power spreading beyond the big cities. This is helped by steady government spending on infrastructure and social programs, which provides a consistent economic stimulus. Stable employment figures, despite global headwinds, also boost domestic confidence.
And inflation, that's been a global worry.
Critically, India has managed controlled inflation. It's expected to ease further to 4.3% in 2025, which is well within the Reserve Bank of India's target range. That helps maintain affordability and stability for everyone. And beyond domestic demand, services exports remain a key growth driver too, showing India's increasing global integration and competitiveness in areas like IT and business outsourcing.
Okay, so strong internal dynamics. What about the bigger picture? The macroeconomic fundamentals government strategy.
Yeah, the fundamentals underpinning this are remarkably solid. India has a relatively low debt-to-GDP ratio, around 56.8%. That gives the government significant fiscal space and stability compared to many developed economies.
Right.
This is coupled with ongoing structural reforms, which are continuously improving the ease of doing business, attracting investment. And we're seeing massive, unprecedented investments in infrastructure, roads, railways, ports, digital networks, crucial for boosting productivity and connectivity.
And the digital economy itself.
A huge factor. It accounted for nearly 12% of GDP back in 2022-23. And it's not just enhancing productivity, it's creating entirely new kinds of jobs and economic opportunities. Plus, specific government initiatives have played a big role.
Like Make in India.
Exactly. Schemes like PM Jan Dhan Yojana, bringing millions into formal banking. Make in India, boosting domestic manufacturing. And the Production-Linked Incentive, or PLI, schemes incentivizing production in key sectors. These have all significantly boosted manufacturing and financial inclusion, building a strong foundation for diverse economic activity and long-term growth.
And that demographic dividend we talked about earlier must be playing a role here too.
Absolutely. India's young, growing workforce, combined with that encouraging rise in female labor participation, hitting 41.7% in 2023-24, provides a significant long-term advantage. A robust labor supply for growth and innovation.
Plus technology and startups.
Huge potential there. Technological innovation, especially in cutting-edge fields like AI and renewable energy, plus a booming startup ecosystem together, they're expected to add something like $1 trillion to the economy by FY30.
$1 trillion. Just from tech and startups.
That's the projection. It highlights the transformative power of India's entrepreneurial spirit and tech prowess. And don't forget services exports. India's share rose to 4.3% in 2023, reflecting that deeper integration into global trade and value chains. India is moving from just being a recipient of services to a major global provider.
But we should still keep the global risks in mind.
Always important to remember the context. Overall global growth is forecast at a much more modest 2.8%, and risks remain. Aging populations in many developed countries, lingering inflation worries, those trade tensions. Interestingly, the report points out something about aging.
Oh.
It notes that healthy aging, maybe through better health care, lifestyle choices, allowing people to stay productive longer, could actually add 0.4% to global GDP between 2025 and 2050.
That's fascinating, shifting the focus from just a youth dividend.
Exactly. Recognizing the potential of an experienced, healthier, older population in global economic planning. It's an evolving idea.
Okay, let's pivot to the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI. If actions have huge implications, there was news about a record surplus transfer.
Yes, a very significant move highlighted in an SBI report. A record surplus transfer of $2.69 trillion from the RBI to the government. Now, to put that in perspective, that's expected to help the central government reduce its fiscal deficit by maybe 20-30 basis points, potentially lowering it from 4.5% down to 4.2% of GDP in FY26.
So that gives the government more breathing room financially.
Significantly enhances fiscal flexibility. It allows for either further deficit reduction, which builds investor confidence, lowers borrowing costs, or potentially increased public spending on critical areas like infrastructure or social welfare, which can further boost the economy.
Where did this huge surplus come from?
Mainly driven by two things. The RBI's Liquidity Adjustment Facility, LAF operations, that's how they manage money flow in the banking system, and strong interest earnings from the securities, both domestic and foreign, that the central bank holds.
And the RBI's overall monetary stance, are they focused on inflation or growth?
Looking at the broader stance, the RBI annual report for 2024-25 projects, India will stay the fastest growing major economy in FY26, forecasting real GDP growth at a strong 6.5%. Headline inflation averaged 4.6% in FY25. Crucially, the RBI has shifted its stance to accommodative and actually cut the repo rate by 50 basis points in 2025.
Accommodative meaning pro-growth.
Exactly. It signals a policy environment geared towards supporting growth. It suggests the central bank is ready for further easing if needed to bolster the economy and stimulate investment, especially as inflation seems to be easing. That rate cut makes borrowing cheaper for banks, which should hopefully trickle down to lower interest rates for consumers and businesses.
And India's leading this digital financial revolution, right? UPI and all that.
Truly leading and setting a global benchmark. Digital payments grew by an astounding 35% in volume and 18% in value. And UPI alone accounted for almost half, 48.5% of all global real-time payments.
Almost half the world's real-time payments.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Unequivocally reinforces India's global fintech leadership. Massive adoption at every level of society. And the RBI isn't stopping. They plan to scale up trials of their digital rupee, the CBDC, integrate it with existing wallet platforms to make it easy to use, and actively explore cross-border payments using it. This could potentially revolutionize international transactions. It cements India right at the forefront of digital finance, showing how tech can drive financial inclusion and economic efficiency on a massive scale. Now, let's dig into the key sectors driving this economy. The services sector is clearly the powerhouse, right? A pilot study on the annual survey of services sector enterprises confirms this.
What did it find?
Well, it contributes over 50% to India's GDP, creates millions of jobs. It's absolutely pivotal for economic activity and employment. The study looked at company structures in FY 2022-23. Most companies and services were private limited companies, a dominant 82.40%, followed by public limited companies and limited liability partnerships, LLPs, each around 8%. And this pattern was pretty consistent across all the major sectors they looked at: construction, trade, other services. Suggests a widespread preference for that private limited structure, probably for flexibility.
And does size matter in terms of contribution, big firms versus small firms?
Definitely. The study found that larger enterprises, defined as those with output of 500 crores or more, they lead significantly across key financial metrics. They own about 63% of the assets, account for 63% of net fixed capital formation, generate nearly 70% of the gross value added, and pay out 63% of the total compensation.
So the big players drive most of the financial value.
Clearly shows a concentration of economic power and value creation within larger players in the service sector. They're driving the bulk of the financial output and investment.
But what about jobs? Is it the same picture?
That's where it flips dramatically. Enterprises with output below 500 crores, the smaller firms, they account for a substantial 63% of total employment.
63% of jobs in smaller firms.
Exactly. Though notably, they only account for about 37% of the total compensation paid out. So it highlights their absolutely vital role in job creation across the country. They're the crucial engines for livelihoods, even if the pay per worker might be lower than in the bigger firms.
So a dual nature. Big firms drive value, small firms drive jobs.
Precisely. Understanding that distinction is crucial for understanding India's service economy and its social fabric.
Okay, let's shift focus to another vital part of the economy: the micro, small, and medium enterprises, the MSMEs. Nitya Aayog has put out reports on enhancing their competitiveness. How significant is this sector?
Incredibly significant, often called the backbone of the Indian economy, and for good reason. The MSME sector contributes about 29% to India's GDP, a remarkable 40% of its exports, and employs over 60% of the entire workforce.
Huge numbers.
Massive. It truly underpins so much economic activity and provides livelihoods for millions.
But the reports mention a structural imbalance. What does that mean?
Despite its importance, the sector is heavily skewed. A staggering 97% of all registered MSMEs are microenterprises. Only 2.7% are small, and a tiny fraction, just 0.3%, are medium enterprises.
Only 0.3% are medium.
Tiny. And this structural imbalance is a real challenge, because while microenterprises are vital for livelihoods, it's those medium enterprises, that tiny 0.3%, that alone account for nearly 40% of all MSME exports.
Wow, so that small group punches way above its weight in exports.
Exactly. It clearly indicates this massive untapped potential in those medium-sized firms. They're the ones that are generally more scalable, more innovation-led, more export-oriented. But they often face hurdles stopping them from growing bigger and competing globally.
And a major hurdle is often access to finance, right? Credit.
Persistent and critical challenge. Now, access to formal credit through banks did improve a bit between 2020 and 2024. It went from 14% to 20% for micro-small firms and from 4% to 9% for medium ones.
Okay, some improvement.
Some, yes. However, a truly massive credit gap remains. The report estimates only 19% of MSME credit demand was actually met formally by FY21. That leaves an estimated 80 lakh crore, that's roughly 96 billion US dollars unmet.
80 lakh crore unmet demand. That's staggering.
It's a huge missed opportunity for growth, for job creation. Countless promising businesses just can't get the capital they need to expand. The Credit Guarantee Fund Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises, CGTMSE, has expanded, but it still faces limitations in tackling this enormous gap.
Are there other challenges beyond just finance?
Oh, definitely. MSMEs grapple with a whole host of issues: critical skill shortages, often due to lack of formal training, low investment in R&D, which stifles innovation, limited adoption of modern tech like automation or digital tools.
Why is that?
often attributed to underlying infrastructure problems, unreliable power, patchy internet, and also just a pervasive lack of awareness about existing government schemes that could actually help them.
So NITIOG has proposed specific interventions, especially for those medium enterprises.
Yes, 6 targeted interventions to try and unlock their potential. They include things like tailored finance mechanisms, like a new 5 crore credit card facility, working capital linked to turnover to help cash flow. They also suggest setting up Industry 4.0 tech centers, dedicated R&D cells to foster innovation, providing sectoral testing infrastructure for quality control, running custom skill development programs to fill those gaps, and creating a centralized digital portal to make it easier to access information and schemes.
So a comprehensive package.
The aim is to position these medium enterprises as key drivers of innovation, exports, sustainable employment, aligning with that whole Viksit Bharat at 2047 vision for a developed India.
Finally, on the economy, let's look at the employment landscape using the Periodic Labor Force Survey from April 2025. What are the key metrics?
Okay, the labor force participation rate, LFPR, that's people aged 15 plus who are either working or actively looking for work, was 55.6% overall.
How does that break down?
Rural LFPR was higher at 58.0%. Urban was 50.7%. Now, the gender split is stark. Male LFPR was much higher, 79% rural, 75% urban. Female LFPR was significantly lower, 38.2% rural, and only 23.5% in urban areas.
Only 23.5% female LFPR in cities. That's very low.
It is a pronounced gender disparity in workforce participation. It indicates a substantial portion of the female population isn't actively engaged in the labor force.
What about the employment rate itself, the WPR?
The worker-population ratio, WPR, the proportion actually employed, was 52.8% overall, again higher in rural, 55.4%, than urban, 47.4%. And the female WPR showed a similar disparity, 36.8% rural, just 23.5% urban.
And unemployment.
The unemployment rate, UR, was 5.1% overall. Male UR was 5.2%. Female UR was slightly lower at 5.0%. Now, while the unemployment rate seems fairly balanced by gender.
The much lower female participation rate tells a different story.
Exactly. The low LFPR and WPR for women suggest many aren't actively seeking work or aren't counted in the labor force at all. Could be due to various socioeconomic factors, cultural norms, household duties, safety concerns, lack of suitable jobs. It effectively limits their economic independence and the nation's productive potential. Addressing this gap could unlock huge economic benefits.
And speaking of employment, particularly rural employment, there's a report on the MGN RGA scheme, the Rural Employment Guarantee, the Missing Work Report.
Yes, by NRGA Sangharsh Morsha. It highlights some significant implementation gaps in this crucial social safety net program, despite an 8.6% increase in households registered under the scheme in FY25.
Okay, more households registered.
There was actually a concerning 7.1% drop in the person days of work generated and a 4.3% decline in the average number of days worked per household.
So fewer work days provided despite more registrations. That seems counterintuitive.
It is indeed. And the data shows only a meager 7% of households actually completed the full 100 days of work they're entitled to in FY24. That's down from 7.6% the previous year.
Only 7% got the full 100 days.
Yeah. And compounding this, the demand for work in April 2025 also fell by 6.6%. So what does this all mean?
A mismatch.
A clear and troubling mismatch between the demand for work from rural households and the actual employment being provided under the scheme. It raises serious concerns about implementation gaps, maybe insufficient funding, administrative bottlenecks, delays in wage payments. It points to a pressing need for stronger monitoring and definitely increased timely funding to make sure MGN-RGA actually meets its core promise, providing that vital safety net and income for millions of vulnerable rural families. When the system doesn't deliver, it directly hurts those who need it most. #IRV, governance, justice, and education in India.
Okay, let's move on to governance, justice, and education within India. Starting with how states are performing relative to each other. The CareEdge States Ranking 2025 sound like a really useful tool for this.
It is very thorough and comprehensive. It's the second edition, and it meticulously assesses states across 7 key areas: economic, fiscal, infrastructure, financial development, social governance, and environment. Uses 50 different indicators.
50 indicators?
Yeah, it's a fantastic way to benchmark progress, see who's doing well where, and pinpoint areas needing more attention across India's diverse regions.
What do the rankings show? Any clear regional patterns?
Very distinct strengths and persistent disparities. Among the large states, Maharashtra comes out on top, then Gujarat, Karnataka, Telangana, Tamil Nadu. So strong performance, particularly from western and southern states.
And the dates at the bottom.
In that large state group, it's Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and West Bengal. Then for the northeast, hilly and small states group, Goa leads, followed by Uttarakhand and Sikkim. At the bottom, there are Nagaland, Manipur, and Arunachal Pradesh.
So western and southern states generally doing better.
The report specifically highlights that. Western states scored consistently well on fiscal management and economic factors, often driven by industry and trade. Southern states, in contrast, tended to excel in governance, environmental protection, and social outcomes, indicating perhaps a greater focus on human development indicators there.
Interesting. So different development priorities or pathways.
It prompts you to think about that, yeah. How different regions might be specializing or prioritizing, leading to these varied strengths across the country.
And even within top-performing states, there can be big internal imbalances. You mentioned Maharashtra earlier.
Yes, a compelling example. Maharashtra's overall economic performance is strong, but the report reveals this stark regional concentration. Just 7 out of its 36 districts, Mumbai City and Suburban, Pune, Nagpur, Thane, Palghar, Raigad, together contribute a massive 54% of the entire state's GSDP.
Over half the state's economy from just 7 districts.
A profound imbalance. It shows that while the state as a whole is an economic powerhouse, prosperity isn't evenly spread at all.
How does that show up in income levels?
Well, despite Maharashtra's average per capita income being way above the national average, 148% of it, the report highlights that 12 districts within Maharashtra actually have per capita income below the national average.
Wow.
And 18 districts show both low growth rates relative to the state average and low per capita income. These stark disparities mean growth benefits are concentrated, leaving significant pockets of underdevelopment.
Is the state government trying to address this?
Yes, they're responding. They've launched ambitious 5-year district strategic plans with World Bank support to tackle these imbalances from the ground up. They've increased district plan funding by 11%, mandating collectors to spend at least 25% on these plans. Plus, extra funds are going to aspirational districts, with specific projects like developing Gadchiroli as a steel hub to boost the local economy there. Crucial targeted interventions trying to bridge those internal gaps.
Okay, moving to the justice system. The India Justice Report 2025, supported by Tata Trusts, sounds like a really critical assessment. What's its main goal?
Its core purpose is to rank states on justice delivery using official data. It evaluates the system across those 4 key pillars: police, prisons, judiciary, and legal aid. Looks at everything: staffing, infrastructure, budgets, workload, diversity.
Why is a report like this so important?
Its value is immense because it precisely pinpoints where the system needs urgent improvement to deliver timely, fair, accessible justice to every single citizen. It holds up a mirror to the system.
And what does that mirror show? What are the major challenges?
It identifies significant systemic challenges across all 4 pillars. A pretty sobering picture, honestly. The police, for instance, remain heavily urban-focused. There's a concerning decline in their rural presence, leaving huge areas underserved. And the police-to-population ratio is just 155 per lakh, way below the sanctioned strength of 197.
So, severe staff shortages.
Yes, directly impacting basic law and order, investigations, public trust, especially outside cities. The judiciary faces this overwhelming burden, over 5 core cases pending across different courts.
5 core cases.
Massive backlog. Plus significant vacancies, 33% in high courts, 21% in district courts, and crushing caseloads around 2,200 cases per judge. This directly fuels chronic delays, hits access to justice for ordinary people, undermines the whole idea of timely resolution.
And the situation in prisons.
Equally severe strain. Prisons suffer from shocking overcrowding, 131%. Facilities are just bursting. And what's deeply concerning is that 76% of inmates are under trials.
3/4 are just waiting for trial.
Yes, not convicted, just waiting. Highlights massive inefficiencies in the process. This links to poor spending, only about 121 per day per inmate, impacting basic conditions. And what's particularly awful, 1 in 4 under trial spends between 1 and 3 years waiting for trial.
Years waiting.
Their lives on hold, often for minor charges, just waiting. It's a profound human rights issue, speaks volumes about delays. Then there's legal aid, meant to help the poor access justice. It shows weak resource use, patchy access. Only one village clinic per 163 villages, despite thousands of lawyers and paralegals engaged. And oversight bodies like forensic labs, human rights commissions, chronic underfunding, vacancies, poor complaint handling undermines accountability.
Are there any positive developments mentioned?
Yes, despite the challenges, the report does highlight some progress, offering a glimmer of hope. Women judges in district courts are up to 38%, which is commendable progress on gender diversity.
That's good.
And 83% of police stations now apparently have CCTVs, which could enhance transparency and accountability. Budget allocations for justice infrastructure have generally improved, though maybe from a low base.
How does India compare internationally on rule of law?
The report notes India's ranking in the World Justice Project's Rule of Law Index 2024. India is 79th out of 142 countries overall. But within that, it's 89th in criminal justice and a more concerning 111th in civil justice.
111th in civil justice.
Yeah. These rankings clearly underscore the urgent need for comprehensive, sustained reforms in India's justice delivery system to really uphold the rule of law effectively for everyone. Within India, the top states for justice delivery among large mid-sized ones were Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Kerala. Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal were at the bottom.
Okay, finally in this section, let's look at education. The ASSSE 2024 report on school education, it found some alarming learning gaps.
Truly alarming, demanding immediate attention. For example, it found only 23.4% of Class 3 students in government schools could actually read a Class 2 level text.
Less than a quarter.
Yeah. This points to what the report calls learning poverty. A huge chunk of young learners are missing those foundational literacy and numeracy skills, the absolute building blocks for all future learning.
Which has huge long-term consequences.
Profound implications for their future potential, their ability to get jobs, and for the nation's overall human development and economy. If kids can't read properly early on, everything else becomes exponentially harder.
What's causing this? Is it funding?
Underinvestment is a major part of the problem. Public education spending is stuck at 4.6% of GDP, still well below the 6% target set in the National Education Policy 2020. This chronic underfunding holds back crucial reforms, like that proposed shift to the 5+3, 3+4 structure, aiming for more holistic learning.
And other challenges.
Persistent issues remain. High dropout rates, especially as kids move to higher grades, gender disparity in access and outcomes, over 1 million teacher vacancies across the country, and just woefully inadequate teacher training, particularly bad in states like Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, which directly impacts classroom quality.
Infrastructure is still an issue, too.
Deficiencies continue to plague the system. Significant gaps. Only 43.5% of government schools have functional computers. Thousands still lack basics, like reliable electricity or functional toilets, directly impacting the learning environment and keeping kids, especially girls, in school.
And the teaching style itself.
Systemic issues contribute. Regional disparities in access to secondary school worsen dropout risks. And perhaps most critically, the system still largely focuses on rote learning memorization without real understanding. Minimal emphasis on critical thinking, essential life skills, or adapting the curriculum to local languages and contexts limits true engagement and practical use of knowledge.
Are there any reform initiatives trying to tackle this?
Yes, it's not all grim. There are important initiatives. The proposed State School Standards Authority, SSA, under NEP 2020, aims to set clear quality standards, though implementation has been slow. Institutional bodies like ANSERT, CERT, CBSE, KB play crucial roles in curriculum and policy. Plus, major government initiatives like NIPI and Bharat, focusing on foundational skills, PM SHRA schools, model schools, and the long-running Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan are actively working on improving access, equity, and quality.
So what's the path forward, according to the report?
The clear suggestions include urgent steps to improve those basic learning outcomes, enhance teacher training significantly, and fill vacancies, rapidly build up digital infrastructure to bridge the digital divide, and establish independent regulatory oversight for greater accountability. Making sure reforms actually translate into better education for every child. V. Environmental concerns and wildlife conservation.
Right. Shifting gears now. Let's address some really pressing environmental concerns affecting the whole planet, and then we'll balance that with a remarkable conservation success story from India. First, the global climate crisis. The figures for tropical rainforest loss in 2024 sound truly alarming.
They are, demanding urgent attention. The world lost a staggering 6.7 million hectares of primary tropical rainforest. Now, To put that in perspective, that's like losing 18 football fields every single minute of the year.
18 football fields a minute. That's hard to even visualize.
It's devastating. This isn't just about trees, it's the lungs of our planet we're talking about.
And the cause of this loss is changing.
That's what's particularly striking and deeply concerning. For the first time, wildfires actually overtook agriculture as the leading driver of deforestation.
Wildfires, driven by climate change.
Heavily driven by extreme drought and record-breaking heat, creating a perfect storm for fires. Brazil, for example, had its worst drought in 70 years and accounted for a massive 42% of all global tropical forest loss, mainly due to fires. Bolivia saw a 200% increase in forest loss linked to wildfires.
And this burning releases huge amounts of carbon.
Massive emissions. This deforestation led to 3.1 gigatons of greenhouse gases being released. That severely impacts climate regulation, biodiversity, and underscores this dangerous feedback loop. Climate change makes forests burn, burning releases more carbon, which worsens climate change. It accelerates the whole crisis.
How does India fit into this picture?
India presents a mixed picture here, showing the complexities. Overall tree cover loss in India actually fell by 6.9%, which is positive.
Okay, that's good news.
But concerningly, loss of humid primary forest rose by 5.9%, especially in the northeast. This increase is blamed on a mix of uncontrolled fires, illegal logging, and unsustainable shifting cultivation practices in those sensitive ecological zones.
And globally, 2024 was the hottest year ever.
Unequivocally, the hottest on record.
Ah.
Climate change and the lingering El Niño effect just worsened fire conditions everywhere. Experts have rightly issued a global red alert. They're warning that continued forest loss doesn't just endanger biodiversity and climate stability, it also poses grave threats to human health, air pollution, altered weather, and economic security as these vital ecosystems collapse.
And that global red alert is echoed by warnings about hitting temperature limits, the 1.5 degrees C target.
Yes, amplified by the World Meteorological Organization's stark warning. The UN says there's now a disturbing 70% chance that global temperatures between 2025 and 2029 will actually exceed that critical 1.5 degrees C benchmark set by the Paris Agreement.
70% chance in the next 5 years.
That's the warning. This isn't just theoretical anymore. The world is already experiencing and likely to stay at historic warming levels. We just had record heat in 2023 and 2024. The last 10 years are definitively the warmest on record. Remember, the Paris goal was to keep warming well below 2 degrees C, ideally limiting it to 1.5 degrees C, to avoid the most catastrophic climate impact.
But hitting 1.5 degrees C seems almost inevitable now.
With core emissions still relentlessly rising, that 1.5 degrees C target looks increasingly, perhaps realistically, unachievable. Forecasts now suggest average temperatures for 2025-2029 will likely range between 1.2 degrees C and 1.9 degrees C above pre-industrial levels. That pushes dangerously close to and potentially beyond that crucial threshold.
Is there a chance one specific year might break the record soon?
An alarming 80% chance that at least one single year between 2025 and 2029 will be even warmer than 2024, our current record holder. Climate experts now basically expect the probability of definitively breaching 1.5 degrees C to hit 100% by the late 2020s or early 2030s.
And what does hitting 1.5 degrees C actually mean in real terms? It sounds like a small number.
The report makes it absolutely clear. Even seemingly small increases matter hugely. Hitting 1.5 degrees C or more can significantly worsen heat waves, increasing deaths, hitting agriculture hard. It can intensify droughts, causing water shortages, food insecurity, exacerbate floods, leading to displacement, economic damage, accelerate ice melt, contributing to sea level rise, threatening coasts.
So every fraction of a degree counts.
Absolutely. It means more frequent, more intense, more severe extreme weather events impacting societies, ecosystems, economies everywhere. This isn't just environmental. It's a direct threat to human well-being and stability.
Okay, after that sobering news, let's turn to something genuinely uplifting. India's conservation success with the Asiatic lion.
Yes, a truly remarkable story amidst the challenges. The 16th Asiatic lion population estimation report shows fantastic growth. India's wild Asiatic lion population, which is entirely concentrated in Gujarat, nowhere else in the wild, has increased by an amazing 32% just between 2020 and 2025.
32% in 5 years. That's incredible.
Reaching a total of 891 lions? This isn't just luck. It's proof that decades of dedicated conservation work are really paying off.
And the number of females is also up. That's important for the future, right?
Yes. A key indicator of future growth, the number of adult female lions has shown strong, healthy growth too, up 27% to 330 individuals. That's crucial. It signals a robust, reproductively active population, pointing towards sustained growth.
What about the longer-term trend?
Over the last decade, 2015 to 2025, the lion population increased by an incredibly impressive 70.36% from 523 up to 891. And just as importantly, their area of distribution where they live expanded by nearly 60%.
So not just more lions, but more space for them, too.
Exactly. Demonstrates successful population recovery and broader habitat expansion, vital for long-term survival.
Where are most of the lions found? Still mainly in Gir Forest.
Gir remains the core habitat, yes. Amreli district reported the highest number, 339 lions, then Gir Somnath with 222, Junagadh with 191. But the latest estimate also includes newly identified satellite populations. Lions are successfully establishing themselves beyond their traditional stronghold.
Where else are they being seen?
They've now been spotted in areas like Barda Wildlife Sanctuary, Jetpur, Babar Jazdan areas. This significantly raises the number of lions in these satellite regions to 497 across 9 distinct locations outside the main Gir area.
Almost 500 lions outside Gir. That's amazing expansion.
It truly highlights the success of comprehensive conservation efforts. It suggests protective measures, careful habitat management, community involvement, anti-poaching. It's all working effectively, allowing the lion population to thrive and sustainably extend its range. It's a fantastic blueprint for wildlife conservation, really. Hashtag #DRS6, global rankings and emerging trends.
All right, let's round out our deep dive with some fascinating global rankings and emerging trends. These really shed light on India's evolving influence and its place in the world. Let's start with media freedom, always a crucial topic. The World Press Freedom Index 2025. It shows a pretty worrying global decline.
Yes, a concerning trend. Global press freedom in 2025 dropped to its lowest point ever recorded by the index. The average score fell to 54.7, putting the overall global situation in the difficult category for the first time.
What's driving that decline?
A major factor identified is financial instability. Media outlets in a huge majority of countries, 160 out of 180 assessed, are struggling financially. This makes them really vulnerable to external pressures, whether political or commercial.
But India's rank actually improved slightly.
Yes, despite that alarming global trend, India's rank did improve, moving from 159th in 2024 up to 151st in 2025 out of 180 countries.
So moving in the right direction, but still quite low.
Exactly. It suggests maybe some positive efforts to enhance media freedom, but significant challenges clearly persist. The index looks at crucial factors: political pressure, the legal environment, media diversity, and that economic sustainability point.
How does India compare to the top and bottom performers?
Well, Norway, Estonia, the Netherlands are consistently at the top, representing really robust media environments. At the very bottom, you typically find Eritrea, North Korea, China showing severe restrictions. So 100 to 51st puts India in context.
And what specific challenges does the report highlight for India, even with the slight improvement?
Even with the improvement, significant challenges remain. India's media landscape is undeniably vast, over 900 TV channels, 140,000 plus publications, but it still grapples with persistent issues like political interference, where government or political groups exert undue influence. Ongoing financial pressure is a big one, leading to precarious conditions for journalists, compromising independence, and concerns like media ownership concentration, where a few big players on lots of outlets that reduces the plurality of voices and can increase self-censorship as media houses might align with powerful interests.
So what's needed for India to improve its ranking further?
The path suggested involves strengthening legal frameworks to protect journalists, ensuring genuine press autonomy from both state and corporate influence, and actively promoting real media diversity to reflect all the different perspectives in society. Now, shifting to the global economic and talent landscape, Bloomberg's 2025 list of the top 20 richest families in Asia is quite revealing.
How so? What does it show about India?
It highlights the growing dominance of Indian business families. A remarkable 6 Indian families made that top 20 list. This signifies a real shift in economic power and influence within the continent.
6 out of 20, that's significant. Who topped the list?
The Ambani family, leading Reliance Industries, topped the list with a net worth estimated at $90.5 billion. Shows the immense scale of their empire. This concentration of wealth within these multi-generational Indian business families is increasingly shaping the Asian and even global economy across sectors like telecom, tech, retail, banking, manufacturing.
Who else is on that list, just for context?
Other prominent families include Thailand's Chirvanont family, Sronpokbang Group, Indonesia's Hartono family, banking, tobacco, South Korea's Lee family, Samsung. It shows a vibrant, competitive business environment across Asia where Indian families are now definitely major players.
And what about young talent? Is India making a mark there too?
Absolutely shining on the global stage there. The Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia 2025 list, recognizing 300 young individuals across various fields, saw India record the highest representation. An impressive 94 entries out of 300.
Nearly a third.
Yeah. It showcases this incredibly vibrant, innovative, entrepreneurial, young talent pool emerging from India. Indicates a powerful pipeline of future leaders, innovators, creators who will undoubtedly shape India's economic and social future. And just as a quick, interesting data point on global sports money,
Oh, yeah?
Forbes' list of the world's 10 highest-paid athletes for 2025 features the usual huge global names: Cristiano Ronaldo, Stephen Curry, Tyson Fury, Dak Prescott, Lionel Messi. Reflects the massive financial clout in global sports.
Okay, let's talk language. Ethnologue's list of the most spoken languages.
Fascinating insights into global communication. English remains the most widely spoken language overall, about 1.5 billion speakers worldwide. Reflects its status as that global lingua franca for business, science, diplomacy.
But Mandarin Chinese has the most native speakers.
Yes, 1.18 billion native speakers, underscoring China's population size. What's really remarkable for India, though, is its incredible linguistic richness on the global stage. 5 Indian languages feature prominently in the top 20 most spoken languages globally.
5 in the top 20. Which ones?
Hindi is third overall, with 609 million speakers. Then Bengali is 7th, Urdu is 11th, Marathi is 16th, and Telugu is 18th.
Wow. That really highlights India's diversity and global reach.
Absolutely. A testament to its vibrant heritage and significant cultural and communicative influence worldwide.
Finally, let's look at electric vehicles, EVs. The Global EV Outlook 2025 shows some interesting trends, particularly regarding China.
Yes, a rapidly evolving industry. In 2024, China really solidified its position as the top exporter of EVs globally, holding a commanding 40% share of all EV exports.
40%. What's driving that dominance?
Largely their ability to produce highly affordable models. These have become incredibly popular in emerging markets: Thailand, Brazil, Mexico, where cost is a huge factor. Chinese EVs are competitively priced, often matching or even undercutting traditional petrol-diesel cars, which really boosts adoption.
Can you give an example?
Brazil is a perfect case. Chinese EVs accounted for a massive 85% of all EV sales there in 2024. That's up significantly from 60% just the year before, as the price gap with traditional cars just shrank rapidly, making them almost irresistible.
But India's situation is different. Chinese EVs haven't penetrated much here.
India presents a unique position, yes. Limited Chinese EV penetration under 15%. Why? Primarily high import duties designed to protect India's domestic manufacturers, plus the strong presence of local alternatives already in the market. Shows how market access rules and local industry policies really shape who succeeds where.
And globally, there are trade tensions rising around Chinese EVs. Tariffs.
Yes. New and escalating tariffs in the EU, US, Canada, some exceeding 100%, are challenging those Chinese exports. These regions are trying to counter what they see as unfair government subsidies for Chinese makers and protect their own developing EV industries.
How are Chinese companies responding to these tariffs?
Their strategic response is shifting towards overseas production. They're actively setting up assembly plants in places like Brazil and Turkey to reduce reliance on direct exports and basically get around the tariffs. By 2026, Chinese overseas EV manufacturing capacity is expected to hit 4.3 million vehicles a year.
4.3 million capacity outside China. That's a huge global expansion.
Significant global production footprint shift.
What are the potential impacts of all these tariffs globally?
They're profound and could reshape the whole EV market. They could lead to higher battery prices, threatening the big cost reductions we've seen since 2015, which were crucial for making EVs affordable. Higher battery costs could potentially slow down EV adoption worldwide, impacting climate goals and consumer choice. This whole global dance of trade policy, manufacturing strategy, geopolitics, it's going to shape the future of EVs for years. Definitely a space to watch very closely. #7DEF4.
Wow, what an incredible journey through all that data. We've really spanned continents, some absolutely crucial topics today.
Okay.
From the, intricate layers of human development to the pulse of global economies. And from those formidable environmental challenges to the triumphs of conservation and the complex evolution of justice systems, too. This deep dive has truly unpacked the layers of information from May 2025. Feels like we've revealed a world in constant, rapid motion.
It's remarkable, isn't it, how each report, while focusing on its specific details, collectively paints this connected, dynamic picture. Progress, yes, but also persistent challenges and these innovative responses emerging across the world. The interconnectedness of all these global and local trends, it's just undeniable, offers a truly profound understanding for anyone seeking to be genuinely well-informed about the state of our world right now.
And as a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over, consider this. As we've seen today, rapid change seems to be the only constant. Whether it's global temperatures shifting dramatically, human development metrics evolving with new challenges and opportunities, or the very structure of our economies and society is undergoing transformation. What aspects of these interconnected shifts do you find most compelling? And what new questions does this deep dive spark for you about the future we're all collectively building?
And just to end on a note of, well, scientific advancement and maybe some real hope for the future, remember that detail about India's first gene-edited sheep, developed right there in a Kashmir agricultural university?
Ah, yes, that was fascinating.
It's maybe a small detail in the grand scheme of things we discussed, but it points to these immense ongoing breakthroughs in biotechnology, things that could fundamentally shape our future food security, enhance livestock resilience, maybe even revolutionize human health down the line. It's a good reminder that innovation is always at play, potentially offering solutions to some of our biggest global challenges.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and definitely keep diving deep into the world's most important insights. We'll be right here to guide you through the next stack of fascinating reports.